Finally, the sheriff is getting sued for his tyranny. Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummell: jail cops got a man killed. And the family is going to sue for their excessive force and incompetence. 5 people have died in his jail in his 4 years in office, and no outside investigation because they would be found guilty. Ireland family still pursuing son's case. By Anne Easker. Staff writer. Although the state attorney ruled there was no criminal wrongdoing in Gregg Ireland's death at the Charlotte County Jail, his family continues to seek justice through civil court. In January, the family's attorneys filed a claim against Sheriff Bill Prummell for wrongful death. Prummell has 6 months to respond to the claim, though Tallahassee-based attorney James Cook said public entities rarely respond to claims. Once time runs out, the next step will be a lawsuit. The sheriff may be sued sooner over additional federal counts such as excessive force and failure to treat, which do not require a notice of claim. When asked about the case, Prummell said he could not respond to ongoing litigation. Cook is working with local attorneys Mark DeSisto and David Lynn. They will most likely file a second lawsuit against the jail's health care provider, Horizon Care. After Ireland was arrested for a DUI on August 22, 2015, he was transported from the jail to Bayfront Health PUNTA GORDA, where he was diagnosed with alcohol abuse and hypokalemia, a potassium disorder. Ireland was treated at the hospital and prescribed potassium chloride, but according to the state attorney's report, he was never given the prescribed medication back at the jail, despite a notation that medical staff was aware of the existence of the prescription. During his second night in jail without medication, Ireland had an altercation with another inmate and failed to comply with orders from a corrections officer. The confrontation ended with Ireland being jolted 9 times with a stun gun. He died in the hospital on August 26, reportedly of natural causes. Horizon spokesperson Martha Harbin said Horizon can't comment on any ongoing litigation or on the health care provided to inmates, due to HIPAA laws. Cook said unfortunately, Ireland's case is not unusual in any way. Right now, he probably has 10 similar cases of inmate deaths from excessive force or inadequate care. We frequently see people going into jail with medical needs, like diabetes or epilepsy, and very frequently in the first days or even weeks of incarceration, the person is not given any kind of medication, he said. Jail healthcare providers take their time doing their own diagnoses, he said, and for a private company like Horizon, anything they can avoid providing goes on the profit side of the ledger. Their interest as a private company is served by getting paid as much as possible and delivering as little health care as possible, he said. It's important for people who work in jails and prisons to remember these are real people with real families, and they have to treat them like human beings. They didn't do that with Mr. Ireland. Tom Ireland said he has no goal in mind in pursuing the case in civil court. He simply wants the people responsible to be held accountable. A parent should not outlive his child, he said. Email, aeasker@sun-herald.com. The Charlotte County Jail, and detention facilities in neighboring counties, are not immune from national incarceration statistics indicating a trend toward rising deaths, particularly suicides behind bars. 5 deaths have been recorded at the Charlotte County Jail over the past 5 years, including 2 suicides by inmates who leaped from the jail's second-story housing pods to a cement floor about 12 feet below. Since 2012, the Sarasota County Jail also reported 5 deaths, including 3 suicides by hanging this year alone that have prompted officials to adopt a policy of doing away with solitary confinement. Over the same period, the DeSoto County Jail has seen 3 inmates die within its old walls. 2 of the DeSoto deaths were classified as suicide, including the death by hanging of 30-year-old Travis Gyrone Hartsfield. That led to the inmate's mother going on social media pleading for an independent investigation. Of these combined 13 deaths at local jails in Charlotte, DeSoto, and Sarasota counties, 7 or almost 54% of them have been classified as suicide. The increase of inmate suicides mirrors what is taking place throughout the rest of the country. Every year since 2000, when the Bureau of Justice Statistics at the Department of Justice first began compiling such numbers, suicide has been the leading cause of death in local jails. In 2013, the latest year for which BJS data is available, suicide accounted for 34% of all jail deaths. Suicides went up by 9% over the previous year. BJS compiles statistics on county jails, and state and federal prisons alike. Some inmates in county jails are people who have been dying. 14. Sun photos by Michelle Haskell. Top photo: solitary confinement cells were abolished 6 months ago at the Sarasota County Jail. Studies and research found that type of punishment, being isolated in a concrete room with metal fixtures and no windows, had a more negative effect on inmates than productive. Taking privileges and/or activities away from an inmate has been a more effective punishment for poor behavior. Above left, correctional officers inside the mental health pod at the Charlotte County Jail. Above right, Deputy James Hemery of the Sarasota County Jail observes inmates from outside the pod from many angles via several windows. Cameras also feed video of the inmates inside their cells to a control booth that is manned 24 hours a day. The East Wing, built in the 1990s, was to enhance surveillance and safety for both inmates and jail staff. The staff has minimal contact with the inmates. The cells are numbered on a board outside the pod with the inmate's name and photo ID to try to prevent misidentification. By Carlos Galarzavev, staff writer. Dying. From page 1. Arrested and are unable to post bond for their release, so they are held in jail until their case is heard in court. County jails also house inmates who have been convicted of less serious crimes and sentenced to 1 year or less. Prisons house inmates who have been convicted of more serious crimes and sentenced to more than 1 year. The Charlotte Correctional Institution in Punta Gorda is a state prison that has recorded 21 deaths since 2012, including 7 in 2016, 2 more than were recorded last year. 13 of the 15 deaths recorded at CCI in 2015 and this year are pending classification because either the deaths are being investigated by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or a cause of death has not been certified by the medical examiner. However, it was the death of inmate Matthew Walker in 2014 that brought national attention to CCI. Walker was brutally beaten by guards and his death was ruled a homicide, but a Charlotte County grand jury did not bring charges against any of the correction officers involved. The Sun's investigation of the case led to a Pulitzer Prize. Walker's family has a pending wrongful death lawsuit in federal court in Fort Myers. Tragedies in Charlotte Jail. 3 deaths at the Charlotte Jail over the past 5 years that were not classified as suicides have brought attention to inmate safety behind bars at the local facility. The death of Gregg Ireland in August 2015 appears to have raised the most eyebrows. Tom Ireland, the inmate's father, is dismayed that his son entered the jail on a DUI, suffered injuries following a confrontation with corrections deputies, and yet his death was classified as having been caused by natural causes. Tom Ireland is convinced his son did not have to die at the Charlotte County Jail. They got it all wrong, Ireland told the Sunday. He got beat up pretty bad. They didn't give him his medication in jail. The confrontation between Gregg Ireland and guards ensued after an altercation between Ireland and another inmate. When Ireland did not cooperate when guards attempted to move him to another cell, they struggled. The burly Ireland was jolted 9 times with a stun gun, suffered a gash to his head and never regained consciousness after he was transported to the hospital. Tom Ireland is convinced his son did not have to die at the Charlotte County Jail the way he did. He still loses sleep thinking how an incident between his son and another inmate inside a cell could escalate the way it did. Although he's consulting with attorneys, a lawsuit has yet to be filed. There's a lot of unanswered questions, Ireland told The Sun. The sheriff's office conducted its own investigation into Ireland's death and exonerated deputies of any wrongdoing. A review of the sheriff's investigation by the state attorney's office agreed with the sheriff's findings. Two jail deaths in Charlotte County were classified as being medical in nature, but raised suspicions as well. In June 2013, Thomas Andreasen was found unresponsive after he was strapped to a restraining chair after he became unruly and would not calm down. Officials said the chair was used to protect Andreasen from himself and prevent harm to others. He was checked on every few minutes, but during one check he was found slumped and unresponsive. In August 2014, 46-year-old Bobby Joaquin was rushed to a local hospital with what was described as a medical issue. Keene was booked into jail the night before for allegedly failing to obey officers' orders to stop her vehicle. The most recent suicide at the Charlotte County Jail took place in June. David Sakalos, 54, had just been sentenced to a 15-year prison sentence after entering a plea of guilty to burglary with assault and battery against a person 65 or older and battery on an officer. Returned to his jail cell to await transport to a Florida Department of Corrections facility, and apparently distraught over the sentencing, Sakalos leaped headfirst from a second-story housing pod. He died a week later from his injuries at a Lee County hospital. Following the inmate's death, attorney David Joff of Fort Lauderdale, who represented Sakalos in the criminal case, blamed the jail for his client's death. Joff claims Sakalos had been at the jail for more than 2 years, was undergoing medical treatment, and jail officials should have known he was at risk. He had been in medical care many times there, Joff told The Sun at the time. Of course, this could have been prevented. It's a jail. Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummell, whose office oversees the local jail, immediately came under fire by critics and political foes alike. They pointed out that in 2013 another inmate, 56-year-old Victor Akers, also killed himself by jumping off the jail's second-story housing pod. Some argued that the liability should have been addressed immediately back then. Akers' widow has a wrongful death lawsuit pending against the sheriff. Soon after the death of Sakalos, another inmate jumped from the same area as the other two incidents. However, the inmate was not seriously injured. As a result of the jumps, the Charlotte County Commission approved last month spending $2 million to install a protective fencing mesh throughout the second floor at the jail in an attempt to prevent anyone else from making the leap. Sheriff's Major Earl Goodwin, who is the commander in charge of the Charlotte County Jail, says that the increasing number of inmates entering the jail with drug addiction and mental illness is making it more challenging on corrections deputies. Goodwin said the sheriff's office is training its people to deal with a growing problem that's not exclusive to Charlotte. When I went to the police academy in 1992, they did not train me on how to deal with mentally ill people, said Goodwin, a 24-year veteran of Charlotte law enforcement, most of it at the jail. I had some training on how to recognize suicidal behavior, but it was very brief. Now, we've recognized, as administrators and managers, that we have this issue. We're not going to get rid of it anytime soon. We have to deal with it, so we're training our staff. Of the deaths, Goodwin said, it's very unfortunate when it does happen. It affects everybody, the family of the inmate and the staff. Sarasota reacts to jail deaths. Sarasota County Sheriff's Major Jeff Bell said he and other county jail officials implemented a policy of not assigning inmates to a housing unit by themselves. He said the new policy was put in place after the suicide of 56-year-old Judy Lamb on July 6. Lamb was being held in custody after she and 2 others admitted to killing a 7-pound Pomeranian and were charged with animal cruelty. Lamb's death came after another suicide in September 2015, that of 25-year-old Maurice Carr was booked into jail on domestic battery and other charges. He was found hanging from the ceiling of his cell. Both Carr and Lamb were the only occupants in their cells at the time of their deaths, prompting the change in policy to not have inmates assigned to a cell alone. Last month, however, Kristen Berry was left alone in her cell and took her own life. The 33-year-old was accused, along with her husband, of killing and burying the body of their 11-week-old baby in an isolated Northport area. She used bed sheets to hang herself from a bunk. Bell said Berry was alone at the time because the other inmate assigned to her cell contracted head lice and was taken out for treatment. The 3 most recent suicides in Sarasota County all took place in the jail's West Wing, the oldest section of the facility built in the 1970s. The other 2 deaths at the Sarasota jail over the past 5 years were that of Karen Ibarra in 2012 and David Washer in 2015, both recorded as related to medical issues. Suicide is a private event, Bell said. Every time one occurs, we look at the event, learn from it and strive to prevent them. As part of the new policy, Bell said, 14 cells that in the past were used to place inmates in solitary confinement, are no longer being used. I don't expect what we'll do is foolproof, but it's wise and we'll be sticking to it, Bell added. I could not understand when jail officials came to my house to inform me that my son had expired. Not an easy death. DeSoto County Sheriff's Captain Brian Harris said 2 of the suicides at the jail he manages were also by hanging, including that of 30-year-old Travis Hartsfield 2 months ago. Sharon Hartsfield, the inmate's mother, has taken to social media to bring attention to her son's death. The distraught mother said she'd spoken to her son just a few days before she was notified of his death. She recalled what her son told her on the phone. He said, "I'm straight. I will see you, August 9th, for visitation. I love you," Sharon posted on Facebook. "This is why I could not understand when jail officials came to my house to inform me that my son had expired." She said her son was in jail on a misdemeanor charge of failure to comply with a written promise to appear in court. He was looking ahead to getting out of jail and getting on with his life, she said. Harris said an investigation into Hartsfield's death has been completed by the DeSoto Sheriff's Office, and it concluded no wrongdoing in connection with the suicide. At the time of his death, Harris said Hartsfield was placed in what he calls administrative confinement. Hartsfield was having problems with other inmates, Harris said. Harris said the Hartsfield investigation, although completed, is not closed, pending a toxicology report for the benefit of the inmate's family. Another inmate, 47-year-old Robert Staton, hung himself at the DeSoto jail in June 2015. The only other death at the jail over the past 5 years was that of 51-year-old William Philip Baucom, who died of a heart attack in December 2013, according to the medical examiner. The DeSoto jail is more than 30 years old. Its linear design is described as the least efficient and requires corrections deputies to walk from cell to see what the inmates are doing. Elected officials have resisted calls to build a new detention facility. We've had many suicide attempts, and our deputies have prevented many of them, Harris said. Harris said the lethal combination of mental illness and drug abuse all but guarantee that there will be more suicide attempts at his jail and others throughout the country. Hanging is not an easy death, Harris said. It's slow and painful. I don't believe you can hang yourself in your right mind. Email, cgalarza@sun-herald.com. Tom Ireland of Port Charlotte looks over past Sun articles and files about his son, Gregg, who died in August 2015, after an altercation with another inmate inside the Charlotte County Jail. Ireland is waiting for further investigation after the state declared that his son died of natural causes. Sun photos by Michelle Haskell. A deputy monitors suicidal inmates inside the medical clinic of the North Wing, the newest designed wing of the Sarasota County Jail. Charlotte County Sheriff Bill Prummell provided a public tour of the jail in June. For the safety of inmates and staff, monitors are fed live video of inmates inside the pods and cells of the East Wing of the Sarasota Jail. Staff has zero to minimal contact with the inmates. The wing, built in the 90s, was a step up from the linear/intermittent surveillance cell blocks, where staff had no view of the cells and inmates unless they went through a series of locked cabinets, control panels, gates, and foyers before gaining any visibility or access. Major Jeffrey Bell, Wright, who works in the Corrections Division of the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office, speaks with a deputy inside the Sarasota County Jail's East Wing. Write a comment.
Hey, Sheriff, we have a question about why your office, your intelligence division, is investigating private citizens for criminal investigation that happen to be activists that are overseeing your department. Why would you have your intelligence division investigate private citizens? We have done...
for life hating so much.
Sir, we don't hate anyone. We love freedom and we love American people. And government is out of control. That's why you're seeing such a revolt nationwide. Why can't you just answer, why is Susan Edwards, your intelligence division, investigating private citizens? This should not happen.
Are you here to apply for a job?
Possibly I might be applying for a job, but that's irrelevant to my question. Why would you ask that question?
Well, enjoy the fair.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse you?
Excuse me, sir.
So those of you that haven't
Wow.
been on a bike before,
Sheriff's getting a little too pushy. You work for us, Sheriff. Just keep that in mind. At one time we respected you, but not with that type of attitude.